Mississippi House of Representatives 9 session. Please let the House come to order. Please stand as we're led in prayer today by a guest minister to be introduced by the gentleman from Lee and remain standing thereafter for the pledge.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I have the esteemed honor to introduce a pastor in my community who is an awesome pastor. The pastor is Reverend Jamal Bodie of the Grace Baptist Church. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a hand as he comes for prayer this evening.
Every head bowed and every eye closed. Father God, we come to you right now. First and foremost, just to say thank you. And God, you've been so good to us. You have watched over us all night and all day. And Lord, right now, as these men and women have to make decisions, Father God, for the betterment of their community and to the great state of Mississippi, God, give them the knowledge, give them the understanding, and give them the wisdom, God, to do those bills, God. And God, we're thanking you right now in advance, God, and protect their families and protect their homes while they're away working down here, God. And God, we'll be so grateful to give you all the honor and all the praise and all the glory, God. And God, right now, we just need you, Father God, to come in this place. And God, check every heart and check every mind of the person, Father God, that they're doing it, Father God, for the based on the people. God, and we love you and we thank you in advance. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, attention, salute, pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Close the machine, Madam Clerk.
There's a quorum present, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you, Mr. Clerk. We'll have the reading of the journal. Gentleman from Rankin moves we dispense with the reading of the journal. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Report of select committees.
We have none, Mr. Speaker.
Report of standing committees.
We have reports on the counter, Mr. Speaker.
Introductions of bills and constitutional amendments. Gentleman from Marion, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, we will do that. Resolutions, petitions, memorials, and other papers.
We have none, Mr. Speaker.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This time we'll have introductions of guests and visitors. Do we have any guests or visitors to be introduced? Gentleman from Jackson, Mr. Zuber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Jackson County delegation, it's an honor to introduce our doctor of the day, Dr. Paul Pavlov. He is the president of the Mississippi Academy of Family Physicians. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate you. Gentleman from Rankin, Mr. Yancey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to have my daughter Blakely here with me. Please help me make her welcome.
Any further introductions? I don't see any. I'm informed we have a special guest to be introduced today. We have a special guest in the gallery. So I'm going to ask the Sergeant at Arms to escort our special guest to the podium. I'm going to recognize the gentleman from Noxubee, introduce our special guest. would ask you to give us your attention. Oh, we hadn't passed. Madam Clerk informs me that we need to pass a resolution, so I'm going to recognize the Chairman of Rules to come forward. We'll deal with his calendar. You recognize, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if we could go to the rules calendar and call up HR number 10, HR number 12, and HR number 15, all in a block if no one disagrees with that.
Any questions on these resolutions? I don't see any. If you favor the resolutions, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next item.
Mr. Speaker, call up HR number 16. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Louisville High School football team commend upon the winning of the 2022 MHSAA Class 4A State Championship and ask for it to be approved. Call up HR number 16 and ask for its approval.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have any questions on this resolution? I don't see any. We are privileged today to have in the galleries the Louisville football team. You see them on both sides. We're privileged to have their coach on stage with us, so I'm going to recognize the gentleman from Noxubee to introduce the coach and make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Coach Tyrone Shorter of the Louisville Wildcats, and they are on both sides of the gallery, and also he has the coaching staff with him. And on behalf of myself and Representative Hood, we want you to help make them feel welcome at this time. At this time, I just have a few words I would like to say about these guys and the coach. You know, in our area, for as it relates to football, all we do is win, y'all. All we do is win. Check your record. Check your record. All we do is win. House Resolution number 16, a resolution commending and congratulating the Louisville High School Wildcats football team and head coach Tyrone Shorter for winning the 2022 Mississippi High School Activity Association Class 4A State Championship. Whereas the slogan, Big Louisville, for the 22 Louisville Wildcats football team covered shirts and posters throughout the west side of the M.M. Roberts Stadium on December 3rd, 2022, and the word big is certainly fitting for the Louisville 14-1 put together in the final minute of its 17-14 win against Mendenhall 12-2 in the Mississippi High School Activity Association Class 4A State Championship. Louisville head coach Tyrone Shorter said he had confidence in his kicker, Hunt, throughout the year, and especially at the buzzer. And the Wildcats set the tone of the game early, jumping out to a 7-0 lead after 13-play opening drive. Whereas the Wildcats are 11-0 in title games. 11-0, y'all, 11-0. All we do is win. A number Coach Shorter is well aware of, as he didn't want to be the first coach to come down to the state championship and lose it. And ladies and gentlemen, whereas it is the policy of the House of Representatives to recognize this group of students, athletes, and their coach, head coach Tyrone Shorter, who had brought honor to their school, their community, and to the state of Mississippi. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the state of Mississippi that we do hereby commend and congratulate the Louisville High School Wildcats football team and head coach Tyrone Shorter for winning the 2022 Mississippi High School Activity Association Class 4A State Championship, and extend best wishes to the team, coaches, parents, and sponsors for continued success. Be it therefore resolved that copy of this resolution be furnished to head coach Tyrone Shorter for the team, as well as Louisville High School Principal, Mr. Daniel Turner, the Louisville Municipal Separate School District Board of Trustees, and to the members of the Capitol Press. Congratulations, Coach Shorter, to you and your team.
All right, do we have any questions on the resolution? Jump from the Neshoba. All right. Don't see any questions. If you favor the resolution, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay, and the ayes have it. Congratulations, gentlemen. You made yourselves proud and your community proud. We're proud of you as well. We're going to suspend business. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. You got something?
Mr. Speaker, if we could hold number 2 on today's calendar, HR number 12, on a motion to reconsider.
Okay, we can do that.
Immediate release on others.
Any objection to immediate release? Hearing none, we will do that. We're going to suspend business for just a second.
Chairman Bell. Chairman Bell. Yes, sir.
Please let the House come back to order. Gentleman from George, what purpose you seek recognition? Passes. All right. We'll go back to the calendar. Laid on the table. Passes. General calendar, public property.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'd like to go to item 1, bring it up and make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended. Bill considered in gross read the third time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have
The
it.
gentleman from Rankin, Mr. Newman, will explain the bill.
Gentleman from Newman, Gentleman from Rankin, Mr. Newman.
House Bill 422, most everybody here knows where the Department of Correction is out in Rankin County next to the State Mental Hospital at Woodfield. And it's all kind, if you go out there, there's all kind of departments of the state out there, MDEQ's out there, Highway Patrol's out there, everybody's out there. And that property has never been divided so that they know where the state hospital is and they know where the Department of Public Safety is. This bill divides it. This bill, now it doesn't divide all the land out there, but this bill divides what is out there and what's going. The reason this became necessary is because of the new veterans nursing home that's being put out there. That when they started trying to figure out where to put it, the land usage out there was messed up. So they've come up with this, and this is DFA's dividing it into the proportion that it needs to be, and that's the explanation of the bill.
Questions? Gentleman from DeSoto, Mr. Criswell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
So I was looking there on line 49. Can you tell me what a countermeasure warehouse is?
I ain't guaranteeing I'm right, but there's part of the stuff that's out there is for Department of Public Safety and all that where they store their equipment.
So are we building a warehouse with this, or just giving them a warehouse?
Most of this stuff that's listed here is already there.
So we're just giving them a warehouse that already exists?
We're putting that piece with the Department of Public Safety. We're putting the piece that goes to the hospital, and we're just dividing it up to those divisions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Gentleman, he passes. All right. I don't see any further questions. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 422. You favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Everyone voted. Everyone voted. Close the machine, Madam Clerk, by a vote of 110 yeas and 2 nays. Bill passes. Next item.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'd like to go to item 2, House Bill 423, bring it up and make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended. Bill considered in gross read the third time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Gentleman recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we'd like to adopt the committee sub.
Gentleman moves committee substitute be adopted for consideration in lieu of the original bill. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Gentleman
And the
recognized.
gentleman from Hines, Mr. Crudup, will explain the bill.
Gentleman from Hines recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 423. As you see on your calendar, today's calendar, you will see that it says the First Presbyterian Church. That is actually not accurate. We are going to give Department of Finance and Administration to acquire and negotiate acquiring of the First Christian Church. For you all that do not know what that is, that's actually the church building that's on the corner of High Street and State Street that you come in and see that it's abandoned, been that way for a number of years. Been a lot of issues going on with that building. So Department of Finance and Administration has come asking if they can negotiate of purchasing that building with the getting two appraisals, but also negotiating all closing costs as well. There's a lot of questions about this around if Department of Archives and History will allow the demolition of this property. From what I've been told, there has been an agreement between Department of Archives and History and Department of Finance Administration that the proper measures will be put in place to see if that can be renovated or it needs to be torn down. And that is an explanation of the bill. Any questions?
Questions? Jump from Hines, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, you yield?
I do.
I heard the last part. You said they were going to do what with it?
Possibly tear it down or renovate it. So that's the.
And
so,
what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I said between Department of Archives and History and Department of Finance Administration, they're trying to put the right permits in place to see what can be done with the building.
Okay, so they don't have a plan right now. They just want to.
They just want to be able to acquire it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, you.
Yes, sir, gentlemen.
I'm just a little concerned about the property that's adjacent to that particular building. I walk by that building every morning. Is they're gonna try to? The other building beside it was vacant as well. Are they gonna try to accumulate the whole corner?
Yeah, that corner, the back. Also, there's a corner on North Street as well. So it's three parcels altogether that we would be acquiring. So yeah,
it's an old gym because we used to play basketball over there. It's an old gym, some classrooms, and some other stuff.
If I'm sure all the properties, yes.
Okay.
And that's a good job of you walking around it.
Gentleman from DeSoto, Mr. Criswell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman yield.
Yes, I do.
So who owns that building now?
I think it is owned by the First, what is it? Fifth Avenue Missionary Baptist Church.
Okay. I mean, I guess my question is, if we're buying something we don't know what we're going to do with it, why does the state need a refurbished old church building?
Well, I don't think we need to refurbish an old church building, but from me doing a little more study around this thing, originally this was owned by, the First Christian Church. I think once they left, First Baptist Church acquired it. First Baptist Church originally wanted to tear the building down and hopefully keep a part of the steeple. But in the transition of doing that, they actually stripped the building of everything with the plan of tearing it down. Department of Archives and History told them they could not tear it down. And so, by that point, they couldn't do anything else with it. So they end up selling it to the Fifth Avenue Missionary Church eventually. And at this point, they don't have the resources to be able to renovate the building. So that's why we have this eyesore been sitting there for a number of years.
I guess my concern is, how many old rundown buildings can the state afford just to buy around the state?
Gentlemen, I'm not sure about that. But we definitely need this one.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman from Tallahatchie, Mr. Reynolds.
Gentlemen, you've got the Christian Church. I believe this was owned by Christian Disciples of Christ Church and used for Christian worship for way over 50 years. Isn't that correct?
I think so, gentlemen.
And this was a gym in its time. And is it possible, hopefully, that it can be restored so we can preserve some of our heritage here in Mississippi? And, my grandmother and grandfather were members of the Christian Church and Disciples of Christ. And, this church was a center, for many, many years. So that church was a very good church, very good structurally sound church for years and years. Is there ongoing work to see if perhaps the building can be salvaged?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, gentlemen. That is the plan. I did hear that it used to be a beautiful edifice, but, we know what it looks like right now, and so hopefully we can bring it back.
Jim from Marion, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman, you.
Yes, sir.
It's been brought to our attention there have been 2 fires in that building. Is that not right?
I do know there's been a couple of fires there. I'm not sure how many. But
a lot of homeless people been living in it, destroying the building, the property. A lot of asbestos problems now with the building, and probably the most likable thing that's going to happen to it is probably to be taken down, and that lot will be leveled off. cleaned up.
Well, yes, sir, gentlemen. Hopefully we'll do the best job we can to make sure we take care of that corner.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Hines, Mr. Brown.
Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir, gentlemen.
I have two questions that concerns me a little bit about this matter. Where is the Fifth Street Church located? You said that a couple of times, but you didn't identify where it's located.
I'm not sure where they're located, but they're not here in Jackson. I think they're just the owners of the property.
You said they are in Jackson?
I said, I don't think they are in Jackson. I said, they're just the owners of the property.
I wouldn't think so. We don't have a Fifth Street.
Well, actually, excuse me, gentlemen, I've been told they're actually in Laurel. They're out of Laurel, Mississippi.
Okay. And you're seeking for the state to renovate that church?
If it's possible.
Thank you.
Lady from Lincoln, Ms. Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How much are we paying for it?
I actually do not know. It had to be two appraisals, so we don't know the price right now.
I'm sorry?
It has to be two appraisals, so we don't actually have a price.
So we're just going to vote, but we don't know how much we're paying?
Not right now, ma'am.
All right, I don't see any further questions. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 423. In favor of the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By vote 86 yeas, 16 nays, the bill passes. Next item, drug policy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call up item number 3, House Bill 393, and make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves that the rules be suspended. Bill considered in gross read a third time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Gentleman's recognized.
This bill deals with pseudoephedrine and ephedrine. As you will remember, at one time it was just over-the-counter medicine, and then there was a problem with people making crystal meth out of it, and then we made it be prescription only. And after about 10 years, there was a public outcry, and the people who made crystal meth were no longer using ephedrine and pseudoephedrine. So several years ago, I think about 3 years ago, as a matter of fact, maybe when we were all here, we put it behind the counter and said you had to show them your driver's license. You didn't have to have a prescription. Your driver's license was run through the NPLEX system, the National Precursor Exchange Log, to make sure you weren't buying up pseudoephedrine and ephedrine all over town. And you could get your Sudafed for your cold. So all this bill does is it extends the repealer to January 1st of 2027. I'm happy to yield for questions.
Questions?
Move
I
final
don't see
passage.
any. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 393. You favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Everyone voted. Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By vote 117 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that we go to item number 4, House Bill 722, and make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules to be suspended. Bill considered in gross read the third time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Gentleman's recognized.
This bill would decriminalize fentanyl testing strips. Right now, fentanyl testing strips are considered paraphernalia. If the narcotics officers were to go into a place where people were making illegal pills, there might be a pill press, there might be a scale, there might be fentanyl testing strips. As you know, we have an opioid problem going on across our country, and drug dealers are placing fentanyl in with other drugs to give them a higher potency. And the problem with that is that fentanyl is a very deadly drug. And so what we're doing now is we're giving people who take these pills a way to test for the presence of fentanyl so they won't die. Now, there are opponents to this bill who would say that we're encouraging drug use. But I would say to you, people who take these illegal pills, maybe college students at a party, they're going to take pills anyway. So why should we let a mistake become a fatal mistake? So all this bill does simply is to remove fentanyl testing strips or fentanyl testing wipes from the paraphernalia list. I'm happy to yield for questions. Oh, by the way, it's supported by the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics. It's supported by the Department of Public Safety. It's supported by the Mississippi State Medical Association. It's supported by my sheriff in Rankin County. So there's broad support for it. So anyway, I'm happy to yield for questions.
Questions? Gentleman from Tibahaw, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, will you yield?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other testing strips for any other type of drugs, street drugs that are available?
I was told yesterday that there were, but I'm not familiar with them.
Okay. Would there be any consideration to also add those testing strips for those other drugs, street drugs, at some point in time?
I'm not opposed to that. I'd like to hear from all these other groups that have pushed for this, but I'm not opposed to that at all.
Thank you so much.
Gentleman from Harrison, Mr. Hullum. Try it now.
Quick question.
I do yield to the Sergeant Major.
Will this reduce overdose? And also, how can we determine how many people are not abusing these scripts by buying them in bulk?
So it will reduce overdose deaths for anyone who chooses to actually use it and apply it to the pill. Okay, so you have to use it in order for it to work. No magic to it. It detects the presence of fentanyl. And your second question, I don't know how to answer it. I mean, I don't know who's going to buy that in bulk. I would hope that our doctor's offices buy it in bulk, and I would hope that our psychiatrists buy it in bulk, and I would hope that our narcotics agents buy it in bulk so that we can help save lives.
I don't see any further questions. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 722. Favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Everyone voted. Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By vote 117 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, wildlife.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to call up item number 5, House Bill 515, and make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves that the rules be suspended. Bill considered in gross read, the third time placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. The gentleman from Wayne to present this bill.
Gentleman from Wayne's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is a carryover from the last time that we increased license fees. We inadvertently left out one of the allowable expenses. So we're going to add training facilities to the list of expenses that license fees may be used for. Be glad to take any questions.
The lady from Hines, Ms. Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have recognition out of order.
Okay. I don't see any questions. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 515. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By vote 114 yeas and 2 nays, the bill passes. I recognize the lady from Hines for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, if you would turn your attention toward the North Gallery, I have one of my constituents, Seaman Jayshawn Monkir. He's here today with his mother, Tamika, and I would just like to recognize him. He was sworn into the Navy August 24th, 2022, and during his boot camp, he earned the top honor of being selected as number 1 out of 664 recruits. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, we'll go to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to go to item 6, House Bill 516, to make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules to be suspended. Bill considered in gross read, the third time placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Gentleman's recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen, what this bill does is just reduces the requirement for law enforcement experience when becoming a wildlife officer. Currently, our requirement is 5 years experience, and we're going to reduce that to 2 years of field experience. So, but the current requirement is you must be at least 21 years of age and have successfully completed 64 semester hours or attended the Law Enforcement Academy and have 2 years of experience. Now, currently we have 165 officers spread over 82 counties. So this is our way to increase law enforcement officers. We currently have about 7 counties that have no officers, and I'm not going to tell you which ones. But this is our way to increase our law enforcement membership. Are there any questions?
Questions on the bill? I don't see any. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 516. You favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. I vote 113 yeas and 2 nays. The bill passes. Next item.
Yes, sir. House Bill, or item number 7, House Bill number 517. Make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended. Bill considered in gross read the 3rd time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Chairman's recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen, what this bill does is this establishes a licensing fee for charter guides on our state fisheries. Currently, we have no regulation for registered guides to charter boats on our fisheries. So what this bill does is it gives the commission the authority and the minimum requirement for charter fees, for requiring a license, liability licensing, liability insurance, and hopefully some record keeping. We're going to start the fee at $500 for residents and not less than $1,000 for non-residents. That's the explanation of the bill.
Questions on the bill? I don't see any. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 517. Favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Everyone voted. Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 93 yeas and 10 nays, the bill passes. Wildlife yields the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, you should have received a supplemental calendar. We'll move to that. Just like everything on there is public health. Recognize the Chairman of Public Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to go to item number 9, House Bill number 1125. Call it up, make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves that the rules be suspended. Bill considered in gross read the 3rd time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Alcorn.
Jim from Alcorn.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is House Bill 1125. I want to go through it as thorough as possible. Section 1 gives the title of the bill. It is called the Regulate Experimental Adolescent Procedure Act. That is the substance of Section 1. After that, you go into definitions. The definitions start in Section 2, and I'm going to go through a few of them, not all of them, but a few of them. On subsection A talks about sex. It defines sex as the biological indication of male or female in the context of reproductive potential or capacity, such as sex chromosome, which are present at birth without regard to the individual's psychological, chosen, or subjective experience of gender. So the easy way to remember that is sex is biological. Gender is a psychological or behavioral, social, or cultural aspect of being male or female. Easy way for that I remember it is gender is mental. Sex, biological, gender as mental. Gender reassignment surgery means any medical or surgical service that seeks to surgically alter or remove, this is key, alter or remove healthy physical or anatomical characteristics or features except for male circumcision that are typical in an individual's sex in order to create a physiological or anatomical difference from the individual sex. So a surgical procedure is changing from one sex to another. Gender transition means the process in which a person goes from identifying with and living as one particular gender to another one. So that's the process. So you have the surgical and then you have the process. The procedures, and here's the key part, one of the key parts that I want to get to the body. The procedures in subsection F, described as gender transition procedures, it lays out what procedures are classified as a gender transition procedure: prescribing or administrating type of drugs, prescribing or administrating type of hormones, performing actual surgeries. It does not include, so please listen, it does not include services to persons born with a medically verifiable disorder, otherwise known as an intersexed child. Services provided when a physician has otherwise diagnosed a disorder of sexual development that a physician has determined through genetic or biochemical testing that the person does not have a normal sex chromosome structure. It does not include the treatment of any infection or injury that may have been caused. It does not include any other that we included earlier when it talks about a procedure with a male circumcision. Healthcare professional means anybody licensed under their governing body. A physician means a licensed physician in Mississippi. Public funds, this is critical. Public funds, as defined in this statute, mean federal, state, county, or local government monies, in addition to any department, agency, or instrumentality authorized or appropriated under state law or derived from any fund in which such monies are deposited. Section 3 is the meat and potatoes of the bill. A person shall not knowingly provide gender transition procedures to any person under the age of 18. A person shall not knowingly engage in conduct that aids or abet the performance or inducement of transition procedures to any person under the age of 18. Section 4 lays out that, as we defined earlier, that public funds cannot be used to aid in these procedures. Section 5 of the bill lays out the enforcement, which provides that a medical doctor's license can be revoked if they perform these procedures. It also gives a claim of action, a civil claim of action for someone who feels as though they have a cause of action that they can seek and file a judicial claim and seek compensatory damages, punitive damages, some type of injunctive relief, or other type of relief. This is very critical. This is the person has a claim. The statute of limitations is 30 years. So you have a 30-year statute of limitations. A person under the age of 18 may have these cause of action brought by their next of kin, their next friend, parents, guardian, whatever you may want to say. The next section, Section 6, just basically says that a business cannot use a tax deduction, cannot claim the procedure and expenses related to the procedures for a tax deduction. Section 7 states that Medicaid, Department of Medicaid, cannot reimburse for these type of procedures. Section 8 lays out and adds that the Medical Licensure Board is authorized to revoke, puts this into that section. Section 9 puts this as a ground for revocation of a license. Section 10 states that the practice of medicine, as defined in Mississippi law, does not include these type of procedures and performing these type of procedures. Health insurance is prohibited from providing any coverage. And in Section 13, if I can get there, Section 13 I want to bring to your attention talks about the Tort Claims Act. A facility, a doctor, physician does not have tort claims immunity if they are performing one of these acts in relation to their job, because their job is not defined within the scope of a Tort Claims Act. So the person is out there, as is the entity is out there and has a lot of exposure. There's a severability clause in Section 14. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, Section 16, it just makes it effective upon passage. That's an explanation of the bill.
Questions? Jim from Hines, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, you yield.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me where this piece of legislation came from?
The gentleman from Rankin drafted it, Representative Newman, along with some other of us went around and put our heads together. And there are other legislations like this around the country, but they are not exactly like this one. This one differs in many respects. For example, it limits it to 18. For example, it does not have a criminal penalty. Then there were more bills by this body that were drafted.
So, gentlemen, how many of these procedures are taking place in the state of Mississippi right now?
Procedures?
Yes.
As far as surgical, I'm not aware of any. As far as the hormonal therapy, that is going on.
So we are having, let's just say, let me ask this question this way. Are there enough of these procedures that are endangering the lives of children under the age of 18? Is that what we're having a problem with? Is why this bill came up?
No. Why this bill came up is because there is a presence and a threat of that. Let me give you an example. You're my good friend from Hines County.
No doubt.
Let me give you an example of what's going on in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, in the year 2015, the state of Pennsylvania paid $78,000 for reimbursements for these type of surgeries and procedures. All right. Most people say, on average, one of these procedures costs between $40,000 and $100,000. We'll say $78,000. We'll just call that a procedure, okay? So in Pennsylvania, they spent $78,000 a year in the year 2015. In the year 2022, which is this past year, Pennsylvania has topped over $4 million. So I say that to give you an example. They started with a very low, and that's only the ones that the state's paying for. I don't know what else is out there with the private people, but they started very low, and that has exponentially grown every year.
So, and I'm glad you made that argument about the cost. But wouldn't we be much better off dealing with bills that would help our closing hospitals across the state?
I think you're going to see some of that, but also I want to be perfectly clear on that. Okay, we're taking this away. We're not giving Medicaid the ability to pay for these type of surgeries. That makes more money, more Medicaid dollars available for those hospitals.
Right, and the majority of these people that are going through this transition in life depend on someone, a specialist, to talk them through what they want to do. Am I correct on that?
I would hope so.
And what is the research that, since I know you said 48 hours, but
well, what I said earlier, right. And I don't mean to be insensitive about that. I mean, this is not in my wheelhouse, so to speak. But when I was asked to handle this, I engulfed myself and put myself immersed in it to find as much as I could. So yes, I've spent about the last 48 hours researching as much as I could about it. And what I have discovered and found out about that is there is a mixed bag. There is a transgender doctor which I researched, who herself is a transgendered woman who went through the process, and she has recommended, yes, we need to wait. We need to provide people with an opportunity to wait. Because there seems to be, in her estimation, as a doctor, an increased medicalization by doctors with these type of children. In other words, they're rushing them. They're kind of having a here and now mentality instead of, hey, look, what's going to happen if they go through this process and maybe they aren't in fact transgendered.
Right. So we have an issue, and I'm gonna come back real quick, with our hospitals not finding enough nurses and doctors to work in the state of Mississippi. We have closing hospitals that are closing. We don't currently provide money from the state to do this to individuals who ask. Am I correct? So we're basically just jumping ahead, just assuming that we will be responsible for that.
Well, we've got some of those bills coming. You were in public health today. There were some of those bills that addressed some of that. And I feel like you're going to see some more as the session goes on.
All right, thank you.
And to your point, I know there are other questions, and to your point, I do feel confident that your rural hospitals are going to get some relief this legislative session.
Jim from Madison, Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Jim and Yale.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
You mentioned, I believe you mentioned in your explanation that it did not, this bill does not include sex assignments at birth.
Intersex, I'll call them intersex children, but yes, that is exempted from the definition of what is a sexual reassignment procedure.
What is an intersex child? Can you tell me what that is?
An intersex child? It would be someone born with both female and male parts, ovaries, testicles, whatever the case may be.
Is that in the bill?
It is.
Did the committee study that particular issue at all? Or did somebody just come up with a definition that was pulled from some outside source?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That definition does not really fit what I understand are the causes or the reasons that a parent and the doctor might want to consider a sex assignment at birth. You said it had the child born with I guess, two sex organs, with ovaries. That is, I'm not sure where that comes from.
I'll read you the definition and see if it's satisfactory.
Wait a minute, gentlemen.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that comes from, but I am positive that is not the sole reason that there are assignments at birth of children.
Okay, let me read you what is exempted from gender transition procedures. Do not include services to persons born with a medically verifiable disorder of sex development, including a person with external sex characteristics that are irresolvably ambiguous, such as those born with 46 X chromosomes with virilization, 46 XY chromosomes with under virilization, or having both ovarian and testicular tissues. And I'm not a, like I said, I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you all that stuff, but that is what's in the bill.
Jimmy, did the committee consider that definition is so confusing, so vague, and use a term that's in there ambiguous, that no doctor would feel safe advising or going through a process with that definition being a part of legislation passed by this House?
Well, let me say this, the legislative intent, gentlemen, and I know you're a learned lawyer, very good. The legislative intent of this is if a child is born with both male and female parts, if you will, then it is the intent that that child getting treatment, getting procedures, and getting medical therapy for that is exempted from this bill.
There are a lot of studies out there, scientific, peer-reviewed studies that go into this area.
Sure.
And generally, the predominant reason of a sex assignment at birth has nothing to do with those things that are in there that you just mentioned. What happens in most cases is that it's not determined at the birth of a child whether that child is male or female. Usually the assignment comes when there is an appearance that the child might be male. And at that point, they use simply a ruler. I'm using that figuratively, a ruler, to determine whether or not the penis is of such a size that you can draw a conclusion medically that that child is a male. When it's not, then the physician, the mother of the child, parents, mother, will have to make a decision. At that point, the child is not involved in that decision-making. At that point, whether or not there's going to be a sex assignment. Now, I'm sure the committee's looked at some of those studies. I doubt you could come out with this type of legislation without knowing that. But are you aware of that?
I am, and under this bill, that child, his parents, and the physicians that are in whatever medical personnel that are attending to him will be exempt from any type of sanctions or medical license revocation.
All right. Now, what the studies have shown, it varies, I guess, during the period the studies were made, that even with that vagueness as to the sexual sex of a child, the parents just can't make that decision at that time. And more than half of those parents just can't do it. And so they want time to pass in order to see if there'll be some intervention somewhere, physically, spiritual, whatever, to help them determine what the child is. But later on, it's determined that that can't be done. Now, what happens if a child reaches, say, puberty, which is usually when things blow up, and the child wants to do something about that, and the parent wants to help the child? Under this bill in Mississippi, nothing can be done. Is that not correct?
No, it's not. Because you would agree with me, when a child is born with that type of disorder, I'll call it a disorder, just for simplicity's sake, with both types of parts, you will agree with me, when they're born with that, they have a medical record, right? And they should have a medical record that documents they have this sexual disorder or whatever. They should have a documentation that they are born with both of these. They're going to see doctors at that point. They're going to get treatment for that. When they get to a point in time and they make a decision on how they want to live,
That's not what happens, gentlemen.
I think they're exempted.
That's not what's happening. They won't be exempted. Because what happens, every child is born when they lose the hospital, somebody's going to make a decision whether or not that child is male or female. It's going to go on the birth certificate. That is the record right there.
The black and white letter of this bill says, services to persons born with a medically verifiable disorder.
I'm speaking about the child that's 13 years of age at this point. We just told that child, if he passed this legislation, that there's no help for this child. We're not going to pay for any psychiatric, psychological help or assistance this child wants, because we locked that child and that family in with this legislation. And gentlemen, there are a lot of kids, more than we might want to know, in Mississippi where this happens. And we are going to doom this child, if they stay in Mississippi, to have to suffer the consequences, which you're not agreeing now, it's a question, of this piece of legislation.
If they are born with a medically verifiable disorder, they are exempted from this legislation. What this is attempting to do is anyone under the age of 18 who is transgendered and wants to go through a procedure or through the therapy, they have to be 18 before they can do that.
All right, I'm going to move on now.
Okay, sure.
Is this legislation limited to medical intervention? Does it apply to anything else, such as transgender people who choose, despite their sexual organs, to be something in appearance other than what's on their birth certificate?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not following you on that. Ask that question again. I'm not following you. I was looking for something. Go ahead, ask that one more time.
It's real easy.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm slow.
It's real easy. Yeah. Now, people in appearance may not be what's on their birth certificate. For instance, a female may decide in terms of how she acts, how she conducts herself as a male, and vice versa. What does this bill do with that?
They can live how they want to live.
Live and let live.
They can live how they want to live.
All right, now, does this affect sporting events, by the way?
In terms of them playing in sporting events or in terms of them attending? What do you mean? What do you
I mean,
mean?
in terms of a person who is, by all appearances, one particular sex or another, and want to participate in a sport that's predominantly played, engaged in by, say, male or female,
I think
of
that
which they are not.
I think we passed a law preventing that maybe last year or so.
But this bill doesn't deal with any of that.
No, sir.
This is a three-fifth vote.
Yes, sir. There's that on there's a tax mechanism in here.
Okay.
Gentleman from Pike, Mr. Porter.
Gentlemen, will you yield?
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong. Earlier you stated that currently there are no surgeries of this magnitude happening in the state of Mississippi.
To my knowledge, and I could be wrong. To my knowledge, I don't think there are any surgeries, but there is the therapy, the hormonal therapy that's going on.
Okay, so gentlemen, would it be safe to say that this is not an emergency and nothing that's plaguing the state of Mississippi?
I think we're taking a proactive approach to it. Like I said to the gentleman of Hines earlier, once the state has paid money out on this. The state has paid some Medicaid money out on this. Like I said, I think we're just taking that proactive approach. Some states that are doing this, they're seeing a floodgates of people rush into their states to have the surgery done.
Are you aware of how much money the state has paid out on this?
Oh, let me see. There was a peer report back in the summer, and Mississippi Medicaid's paid about $131,000 for 47 visits from 2017 to 2022.
Okay. Gentlemen, let me ask you this.
Let me say this. Let me caveat on the back of that, if I may. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Of those 47 visits, 2/3 are older than 18. 1/3 are between the ages of 11 and 17.
Okay. Gentlemen, is this the first bill to come out of public health this session?
Say again.
Is this the first bill to come out of public health this session?
Well, it's not the first come out of the committee, but it's the first on the floor. Yes, sir.
It's the first bill on the floor. And I think you are aware of the hospitals that are closing in our state, correct?
I am.
Do you believe that it was more important to bring this bill out first before you brought any other bill to address the hospital crisis in our state?
Again, we passed some bills today in public health. I don't know if you're on that committee, but we did pass some bills today dealing with that. The chairman, as you know, has the discretion on which bill he wants to bring out first, and this is the bill he wants to do, and that's what we're doing.
So it's safe to say that the chairman thought it was more important to bring out this bill that's not an emergency in the state of Mississippi as opposed to bringing out a bill that addresses our closing hospitals.
Well, an emergency, I don't know that emergency is the right word, but it is a readily, something that has readily happened and can happen. And it's an issue that the state of Mississippi, that my constituents, his constituents do care about. So in that regard, for my constituents, it is something that they consider as potentially an emergency. Yes, sir. I agree. I understand what you're trying to say about the hospitals, and we're working on that. But I also understand that the hospital issue is much bigger than just one bill. It's much bigger than something that we can just do in an afternoon. It's something that's going to take all legislative session to do and go through the entire process to do.
And with that being said, the chairman found it more important again to bring this bill out before he brought any other bills that you admittedly passed out of committee to address our closing hospitals in the state of Mississippi.
All I can say is he's brought bills out, and you're going to see some more throughout the session.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Lamar, Mr. McCarty. Passes. Gentleman from Tallahatchie, Mr. Rosebud.
What does gentleman yell?
Always.
So, gentlemen, I heard you have an explanation earlier on about this bill, stating that in Pennsylvania, they started with a low financial stand, and they had a greater stand. Is this bill proposing that we should do it to prevent adding extra finances to medical expenses in the state of Mississippi? For
me, the finances are secondary. For me, it's the stories that I read of the people who went through this and the children and the psychiatrists that I talked to who have dealt with the transition and people, there's a growing cohort, if you will, of kids who are detransitioning. So for me, it's about those children and making sure we take a wait and see approach. The Medicaid and the payment and the funds and all that, that's a collateral part of this, sure. But for me, it's about taking a wait and see approach to make sure that these kids are in fact what they think they are.
But, gentlemen, is it correct that when we put the fact in that we're talking about numbers and we're talking about financial costs, that it holds a substantial amount on the decisions we make here in this body?
Certainly. That's one of our, that's one of the things, the biggest things that we do down here is has to do with money in the budget.
So therefore, that means that if we make that decision based upon what those numbers were, from what you explained from Pennsylvania, with a low standing at one point and a high standing, you said we don't want to get to where Pennsylvania is. So it does mean that we're voting to say we don't want to increase the cost, the medical cost, expense on the state side.
I'm going to split hairs with you a little bit. The example I gave about Pennsylvania was that they started low with cases, and then it has exponentially grown. Okay, that's not necessarily about the cost. That's exponentially about their policy that they're having up there is that we think it's okay for under 18-year-olds to have this type of surgery. In Mississippi, we're kind of saying the other thing. We're saying under the age of 18, we don't believe you need to have this. You can have your therapy, you can have whatever you need to have, but we don't believe that the surgery is part of it. The cost is certainly a part of that, but for my purposes in giving you that example, it is to show that the cases, when you start paying for this in the state, that the cases rise up.
Okay. Now, the second question I have is, you stated that with the research that's been done here in the state of Mississippi, 2/3 of the individuals that were affected were above the age of 18. Is that correct?
No. Similar, yes. It's 2/3 of the money that Medicaid has paid out were above the age of 18. I don't know how many people actually, if you have private insurance, how many people actually are going through this in Mississippi. I don't have that number, but from the peer report that I got, 2/3 were over the age of 18 that were being in this document from peer.
So the things that we normally try to promote here says that we go with what the majority rules, right? So if you had 2/3 of a group of individuals that are above 18 and 1/3 is below the number 18, why are we presenting the bill?
Because we don't want people under the age of 18 doing it. It seems like most of the people are doing this over the 18, so let us protect the minority that are under the age of 18.
But statistically, we are not even in a harmful stage at this point, because you clearly stated several times that 2/3 of the individuals are individuals that are above the age of 18. So the 1/3 is below that. So again, we normally vote based upon what? The majority, right?
Which seems, I think we're talking in circles here. It seems like we're making 2/3, the majority of this stuff happens over the age of 18. There's a very slim minority, there's a very small minority under the age of 18. So then we shouldn't have a problem voting to make this illegal under the age of 18.
Well, even if so, then I think if we're going to put a limitation based upon age, then we should put it to the true legal standard that we say in the state of Mississippi is 21. So, but gentlemen, I thank you for opening for questions, and thank you for the comments.
Jim from Holmes, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, in committee an hour or so ago, you and I had some discussion about this bill. And the gentleman from Madison, I want to go back to kind of what he was touching on. Now, the intersex, there's actually 4 categories of intersex. You familiar with those?
I have to say I'm not, gentlemen.
You got the first two are actually in your bill. You got the 46XX, the 46XY. And they are carved out as exceptions to transitional, but there's also two additional ones. One is complex or undetermined intersex, and the other one is true gondola intersex. Now, those last two, gentlemen, and I think I agree with you, is that on the first two, that if they're medically diagnosed with having the XX or the XY, that they could have hormones or surgery or whatever. But how about the other two categories? And this is the National Institute of Health.
Okay. And let me say this, the word intersex is nowhere in this bill. That's my word. That was just a word for simplicity for my sake. So that word is is not in here. I think you'll agree with me on that.
I'm correct.
As to what you're saying, all I can say is that in here we do provide some language that may be broad enough to get into that. It says a medically verifiable disorder of sex development.
Okay. But we would agree that your bill do contain 46XX and 46XY.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we would also agree that your bill don't include complex or undetermined. It's nowhere found in your bill, correct?
Not to my knowledge,
Okay.
although I would say arguably you can make an argument that they're under that broader exception.
And again, gentlemen, we kind of went down this rabbit hole and committed, but you know what my concern is. A child, 16, 17 years old, having difficulty trying to find a medical provider to help he or her to deal with this quote-unquote birth defect they may have been born with. Is any concern at all that may prevent a person from receiving the medical treatment they need?
Again, I think the bill is clear if they're born and medically diagnosed with that we've discussed, with those type of ambiguous natures, then I think they are exempted from this, and the doctor can proceed as they see fit.
And I would respectfully disagree with it. I think it's kind of vague. Let me ask you a personal question. Would your bar license on the line with this definition, would you be willing to move forward with somebody that's in dire need of your help and possibly risk losing your law license? Based on this definition, the clarity of this definition.
Of this definition, I think I can certainly make an argument that someone who is born with what you've described with,
okay, you can
that they are exempted, and I think I could advise a hospital or a doctor as an attorney that if they are born with that type of medical diagnosis, that the hospital and the doctors could proceed with the treatment and with procedures that they see fit. I would feel confident in providing that advice.
And gentlemen, sometimes you would agree that even amongst professionals, same number of years experience, sometimes there is disagreement as far as what diagnosis is or a particular treatment. If you have two providers, one is determining that a particular person is suffering from intersex, one that says no. The one that says yes, move forward with providing medical treatment. At the end of the day, how would it be resolved? Would I get my license suspended, have to hire an attorney, deal with a lawsuit that can be brought 30 years later?
Yeah, I don't know that none of that stuff happens in a vacuum, but if that child is born with the medically diagnosed disorder, and I don't know if disorder is the right word, but let's just say that for simplicity's sake, if the child is born that way, where they have to have both parts of male and female, one doctor says he doesn't want to do it, but the other doctor says that he can and does, I don't think the doctor that did it has any type of exposure.
And gentlemen, the 4X, the 46XX, 46XY, all of that, that's actually dealing with the chromosomes of the DNA, the chromosomes of individuals.
Right.
But they also says that there's about 15 or 16 physical characteristic difference between male and female. Men tend to have larger lungs, larger hearts than females. Do this bill take in consideration any of those other physical characteristics that science has proven that distinguish male and female?
So I guess your question is, does the bill include these type of other characteristics, and whether or not they're, I mean, I don't know. The only thing I can tell you about is if what is exempted, or what we talked about, services provided when a physician has otherwise diagnosed a disorder of sexual development, that the physician has determined that through genetic or testing that the person does not have the normal sex chromosome and or an injury that might occur. So that's all that's exempted from it. So your question about, men have bigger lungs, men have facial hair, whatever the case may be, that's not specifically in the bill, no.
What you think, you satisfied that it's covered, even though you admit it's nowhere in the bill, but you feel confident enough that.
I feel confident that if a baby child, first off, a baby child is not going to have facial hair or any of that type of stuff, but a baby child that is born with those type of parts, I'm confident in saying that yes, they're going to be able to get the care that they need in the state of Mississippi.
And is there any penalty in this bill for a parent or a guardian who?
No.
No penalty.
A parent, it does. A parent falls under the, and I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to clear that up, if you will. Let me get to section 3. It talks about a person. It doesn't designate that. It says a person shall not knowingly provide gender transition procedures. Now, a parent, I don't guess, can do that, but it does say a person. But to your point, there is not any type of teeth, if you will, if a parent does this.
Okay. So if a parent, for whatever reason, we outlawed in Mississippi, and a parent makes a decision to take their child out of the state of Mississippi, you're saying that they would not be in violation of the law?
I think they would, but there's because the next part of that says a person shall not knowingly engage in conduct that aids or abets the performance or inducement of gender transition. So I think that yes, they potentially could be in violation of this law, but the statute in this bill does not provide a penalty. There is not in other states, again, to the point that the gentleman from Hines brought up about other states doing this. Other states have put in here a criminal penalty for the parents. Other states have put in here a mechanism to where that classifies itself as child abuse. We don't have that here. Now, certainly, if this runs afoul of another part of the criminal code or another part of the abuse and neglect statutes that I know you're aware of, then certainly a parent could be a part of that. But as of a specific statute that says this is child abuse or this is a criminal action, I'm not aware of one.
And gentlemen, 2 more questions, but I'm gonna give you a hypothetical before my last question. I have a child, have male parts. Birth certificate says he's a male. He get 13, start developing breast, other physical characteristics of a female. They do test and find out that this child have ovaries. Can't find a doctor in Mississippi to do it. I choose to go to California. You telling me I'd be in violation of this law, basically?
No. I don't think you would, because a child is not going to, at least I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but typically if he has ovary, he was born with them. I think it goes back to the exclusion that he was born with these type of parts.
But I hadn't found a doctor in Mississippi that were willing to say that.
And that's fine, but if you found a doctor to do that, you're asking as a parent, are you going to be held liable in violation of the law? No, I don't think you will, because under the exclusion paragraph of the bill, your child was born that way.
Last question. How many known cases under the 18? And if you've already answered this question, I apologize. How many under the age of 18 have we had in Mississippi?
I don't know an exact number, so I apologize. I can't tell you that. I know that UMC has said they've had 47 visits. Those visits, I don't know, they were not designated as adults or 18. So I know 47 visits.
47 visits.
From,
last census? 2.5 million people in the state.
yeah, and to be fair, that was 47 visits between 17 and 22.
Okay.
2017 and 2022.
2.9 million people in the state of Mississippi. 47 situations where people have just inquired about it.
That is all the numbers I have. It could be more. That's what Medicaid and UMC have seen. It could have been more. I know there's clinics all over the state. And like in my neck of the woods, people may go to Memphis to do it. So I can't tell you if there's just 47.
Gentlemen, to me, it sounds like a solution in search of a problem. But I thank the gentleman for his time.
The gentleman from Lawrence, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Speaker. Gentleman, you.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, I'm trying to look at this from all perspectives. I know we have a physician shortage in Mississippi already because I hear about it all the time. Has this bill in any manner been vetted perhaps by the Mississippi Medical Association or the Mississippi Association of Psychiatrists / Psychologists or whatever the equivalent is?
All I can tell you is I personally talked to psychiatrists when I found out about this bill, and they told me that they take kind of a wait and see approach. They prefer a wait and see approach. Now, I will say that that's probably, in fairness, in contradiction to some of the American psychological associations and stuff like that. But as far as who I trust and the Mississippi doctors that I trust, they prefer kind of this wait and see for the ones that I've talked to. I certainly hadn't talked to association. I hadn't talked to the hospital or whoever else you mentioned, the doctor association. So I can't speak for that. I can just tell you who I've talked to.
Okay. During your conversations with whomever, was there any mention made of procedures for other maladies, if you want to call it that might be so similar to some of these procedures that in order not to contravene this law, they perhaps would be hesitant to do other procedures for what would be absolutely different reasons and different results?
I think you have to look at it. I'm looking for the section in the bill that addresses what you're talking about. I think that they're not going to be prevented. For example, let's say that for example, let's say that there is a woman that wants a breast augmentation. Okay, perfectly fine. The issue and what the bill turns on, as we lawyer like to say, what it turns on is, are they trying to change gender? So I think that answers your question, is that any procedure is available as long as they're not trying to change gender. Keep in mind, though, gentlemen, keep in mind, this is only 18 and under. So if they're over the age of 18, they have the ability to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman from Pearl River, Mr. Owen. Passes. Gentleman from Leak, Mr. Walker. Gentleman from Leak, Mr. Walker.
So I have a question. You made reference to a medically determined condition at birth. What happens if that condition is not determined at birth and it shows up later on 4 or 5 years, 6 years down the road?
I think it depends on the condition. Not to give you a lawyer answer, but I think it depends. Like for the example that the gentleman from Holmes gave me, he discovers later on in the child's life that the child was born with, or the child had ovaries. Well, we know that just doesn't happen, that you're born with that. So I think it depends on the situation, but typically, and under this bill, if they're born with it, they're going to be exempt, or they're going to be able to have whatever procedures they need to have.
But your definition depends, that is define what can happen.
My definition is, yes, and the bill defines, it depends on were they born with it? Were they not? Were they born with the physicality of it, or were they not? Or diagnosed at birth or something to that effect?
Okay, but does the bill say diagnosed at birth?
It says, let me get to it and get you the proper language. It says, services to persons born with a medically verifiable disorder. And then it lists, that's kind of the catch-all of everything. And then it talks about the chromosomes, the 46 chromosomes that we talked about. It talks about ovaries and other type of tissue. So that's the key. It's a medically verifiable disorder of sex development that they're born with.
Right, and that's what I said, at birth. You said medically
verifiable disorder of sex development that a person's born with.
Okay, regardless of when it's determined.
If it can be determined that they were born with it, yes, sir. I think again, the issue turns on were they born with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Lady from Hines, Ms. Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Thank you,
It's been all
gentlemen.
men before you. Sorry.
Say it again?
I said, yes, ma'am. I'll yield. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So when these kinds of decisions are being thought through and made, there is a team that's helping with this decision. Is that right? It's not just the child is making the decision.
Ideally, it would be a team, I guess, a team of doctors and people. Yes.
Certain assessments have been made with a psychologist or a psychiatrist. The parent is involved.
I would think so, but I can't speak as to all of it. But I would think ideally, yes, there's a team of people dealing with this, a team of doctors.
And so are we saying that we're taking away the decision from parents? We're getting involved in parents' rights and telling parents that they can't make decisions on behalf of their children?
I think the government does that on a daily basis, if you want my honest opinion about it.
Why is that something we would want to do?
Are we taking away their rights, a parent's right? Let me give you an example. My little boy, 10 years old, he's suffering. He has a little fever and a cough and an earache. So I called my wife this morning. I said, how's Baker? And she said, he's fine. Took him to the doctor. So the first question I asked her was, how was my son? The second question I asked, what did the doctor say? So here I am as a parent of my child, depending on what that doctor says, okay? So you've got a lot of parents out there just like this who are seeing their child who is hurt, who is going through depression, who's going through anxiety, who's going through whatever despair that they may have. You know, they're out there. So that parent is maybe overly sensitive to what that doctor is saying, and maybe overly sensitive to the medicalization that doctor is asking for. So that doctor is making the best decision for the parent, okay? That's the issue that I want to look at is are those doctors making the best issues for the kids? And that, I'm not sure, is the case, because there is some data out there saying about the medicalization, about the exorbitant amount of this stuff and the way that it costs. For example, one of these procedures, a doctor, from what I understand, a doctor testified in Vanderbilt, says that Vanderbilt Hospital stands to make on average $100,000 profit from these type of procedures. So I say that with an ear caution to bias on these doctors who these parents are listening to. And that's not the parents' fault. We all do that, but I want to be careful that those doctors aren't biased and jaded a little bit.
So we're saying we can't trust the parents to make decisions with information that they're given from a doctor what's best for their child. Well, let me ask you this. How many doctors would this affect? How many doctors are giving wrongful information to parents and telling them that you need to have this surgery because I know what's best for your child and you don't? How many doctors are doing that?
I asked the chairman if he knew how many, I asked the chairman if he knew how many doctors, and I don't know how many that it would affect. But I want to be perfectly honest and clear. It's always important to protect the children. Always. That's the number one prerogative of this piece of legislation is to provide protection to the children. Okay? As far as taking a parent's right away, we do that on a number of cases. You know, I practice law. When I go before and do a divorce, and one of the issues there is who's going to get the child. The judge makes that decision. Even though one parent say, well, I'm the better parent, the judge is ultimately going to make that decision. We have a whole criminal code filled of situations to where a parent is not going to let a 13-year-old child go and have sex with somebody. Okay, if a parent, that's not in the best interest of the child. If a parent says, okay, yeah, I got a 13-year-old, you can have sex with them. That, a parent can't do that. That's not in the best interest of the child. They can be prosecuted for that. I want to give you an example of the very first case that I tried. Very first case that I tried was in Winston County, Mississippi, in Louisville. We had represented a 18-year-old boy. That boy was charged with aggravated assault and armed robbery. We had worked out a deal to give him 5 years to serve. Pretty good deal, I thought, especially for those type of charges. He was there. He had been sent to Louisville from California. His father had sent him over here. He didn't really have a relationship with his father whatsoever, but his father showed up on the day of trial. And his father's yelling from behind the bar, don't take the deal. You can beat it. Don't take the deal. Don't take the deal. And all I remember seeing from that 18-year-old kid is a smile because he had some acceptance from his father. Because he had some type of awareness from his father that I'm okay, that I'm going to do what my dad says and tells me to do. And you know what? We went to trial. He was convicted. He's doing 55 years day for day. I guarantee you, the father thought he was doing what was in the best interest. But now I guarantee you that child, now that he's of sound mind, now that he has the capacity, would go back and take that 5-year deal. So what I'm saying is, parents sometimes, and I'm as guilty as the next, get a little bit of rose-colored glasses, if you will. So I think it is a compelling government interest for us to take part in this legislation.
That's a great story, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for sharing that. But we also have children in this state that go hungry every day. We have children in this state that are living in extreme poverty. What are we doing about that? Why are we taking time in this body to further stigmatize trans children? Are you not aware that this same law passed in Arkansas and the federal court ruled it unconstitutional?
They are waiting, from what I understand, it's on appeal. But there is some injunctive relief that was granted.
But right now it's unconstitutional. So we're ready to spend taxpayer dollars fighting something that has already been ruled unconstitutional.
I would say, as to what you're talking about in Arkansas, this one's a little bit different. It's got a little bit more nuances to it. But Arkansas is different from Mississippi in a lot of ways. We have to show that we have a compelling interest, and the state does that with all type of healthcare initiatives and with all type of healthcare issues. For example, there's a compelling interest here in this specifically one about taking and keeping the Medicaid dollars away from it. So I understand what you're saying. And if somebody sues on it, there's nothing we can do about that. We pass legislation all the time where people sued. People said the same thing when we passed the Gestational Age Act. Why are we doing this? We're going to get sued about it. What happened? It went to the Supreme Court and Mississippi won.
Shame. What about a young girl who needs hormone therapy because she has small breasts? Or a young boy that needs hormone therapy for whatever issue that they're dealing with. People need hormone therapy for all kinds of reasons.
As long as I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Are we saying that they will not be able to get that kind of care?
No. As long as they're not trying to change their gender, they'll get the care that they...
Is that not gender-affirming hormone therapy?
Are you saying this is a girl who's trying to take hormones to help her develop better?
Correct. Because there are some girls that have
The issue
that are
is
born with more testosterone than
the issue.
estrogen.
The issue is reassignment of gender.
Only.
Yes.
Okay. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, they have a report that shows that 98% of trans youth still identify as trans later. Do you think we need to take more time to study this issue before we pass this bill?
I think we need to pass the bill because I believe it's a good bill. I think what you're saying is certainly when they get to a certain age, I've seen some of those reports, and a lot of those reports talk about when they get to an age to where they're developed mentally and they have the capacity, they do not regret what they did. But I can also, I have a long article here from the New York Post where, well, as I said earlier, there is this cohort that is emerging specifically among people under the age of 21 who are having trouble and who are wanting to detransition and are regretting what they did. That cohort is raising and growing every day. So,
And you're hearing those stories here in Mississippi?
I haven't heard any in Mississippi, but it doesn't matter if it's happening in other states. You just asked me about what happened in Arkansas. If it's happening in other states, it's happening in Mississippi, I'm sure.
Would you agree with me that it is extremely hypocritical to tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her own body? But we can tell parents what they can do and what they can't do for their children.
I think it depends on the circumstances. Like I said earlier, it depends on the circumstances. You know, we have laws here that a woman cannot smoke meth. She's putting meth in her body. All right, we're telling them that they can't do that. We're telling parents that they can't engage in certain or have their children engage in human trafficking. So no, I don't. That depends on the circumstances. Life doesn't happen in the vacuum, and that's what I'm saying in this situation is. I don't think that what you're asking, no, I don't think it's hypocritical. It depends on the circumstance.
So we can tell a woman if she wants to choose to have an abortion that she can no longer do that in the state of Mississippi.
That's the
But
law.
if a parent wants to go forth with making a decision for their children, according to this language, they would be in violation of that.
They would be in violation of making a decision in their children. But keep in mind, that child has the ability, has the right, as do the parent, they have the right for that child to live as any gender it wants to live, okay, until it gets to the age of 18. And when it gets to the 18, if that child still has the capacity, knows the ramifications of what's going on, that child can go through the reassignment surgeries, the reassignment hormonals, and the stuff such as that.
So what other options would this family have in the state of Mississippi if this were to pass?
Oh, they have the options, pretty much the same options they have now, except for hormone therapy. They'll have the options to talk to whatever psychotherapist they have, to see whatever physician they have, to help them, I guess, cope or to determine if they are in fact transgender. So they have the options that those options will still be available.
What physician is going to see a child if we pass something like this? They're going to be scared as all outdoors because they don't want to lose their license.
Potentially.
So what options would they have? To leave the state?
I'm sorry?
To leave the state?
They certainly have the option to leave the state. But what I'm saying
That's what we want.
What I'm saying is the child itself can still get whatever therapy they want. Counseling, a psychiatrist can still see them. They just can't have any of the procedures as defined in this bill.
And if the psychiatrist determines that this is the best solution for them, they're stuck like Chuck. Too bad, you can't get it.
Until they're the age of 18 under this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Sunflower, Mr. Anthony.
Motion at the proper time, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, state your motion.
I move to table this bill.
Motion is to table. Those opposed have 5 minutes. Anyone wish to speak against the motion to table? I don't see any. Oh, you do? All right, you're recognized, gentlemen.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask that you oppose the motion to table. This is a bill that I feel is necessary in Mississippi. It is a bill that I think protects our children, and I would ask that you oppose.
Anyone else? I don't see anyone else. Question recurs on the motion to table. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Noes have it. Noes have it. Roll call is demanded. There's enough. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the motion to table, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Everyone voted. Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 34 yeas and 80 nays, motion table fails. Further questions? Lady from Jones, did you have a question? You just have an amendment. She has an amendment. All right. We are recycling some then. Gentleman from Tallahatchie, Mr. Rosebud, question?
Have a motion to postpone to April 2nd.
Okay. Motion is to postpone to April the 2nd. It's debatable within limits. You got anything you want to say? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask the members to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. I didn't know you wanted to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask the members to vote no to postpone and let's finish this debate today.
All right. Motion is to postpone to April the 2nd. If you favor the motion, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The noes have it. Gentleman from Adams, Mr. Johnson, you have a question?
I have a question.
You wish to yield for any further questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Gentlemen, briefly, I want to make sure, I've listened to this and I was reticent about asking some questions, but you said some things that I felt like I needed some answers to. I want to make sure I understand this. We're talking about a condition that's a medical condition, aren't we?
Well, let me ask you this. You were talking about a medical condition. What we're talking about too, basically, we're talking about a physical condition and potentially a mental health.
Yeah, both of them.
Condition.
Both of them are medical. Whether they're problems or whether they are conditions, the only way to address them is through a physician or a trained licensed professional. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you used an example of mother using meth. You aren't suggesting that a child being trans is like a person taking an illegal drug. You didn't suggest that as a comparison.
No,
right?
sir, at all. The question that was posed to me was, we're telling women what they can do with their bodies. Well, the state does that in various ways. That was the intent of the answer.
Yeah. And so as I look and listen to these discussions, we are essentially, you're saying that if a parent seeks to find treatment for their child's condition, that we as a legislature are telling them what they can and cannot do. This is what this bill does. Isn't that correct?
Within parameters, it depends on the child, but yes.
But this is a health condition, whether it be psychological or physical. You would agree with me?
To some extent.
And that the only person that has the authority to seek treatment for that child is their parent, if they're a minor.
Well, okay, I'll go along with that. I mean, you have other issues, but yes, as far as
if you're a minor,
their legal guardian, their parent, whatever.
Right. Okay.
I don't want to split hairs, but us lawyers, we do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Their legal guardian or their parent.
They have, but to my understanding, some of this stuff has been done without the consent of the parents.
Okay, well, that would be illegal, wouldn't it? That would be illegal as the law stands now.
If not illegal, unethical.
It would be illegal if you conducted a medical procedure on a minor without the consent of their parent. It would be illegal.
I would think so, and I want to make sure that it is.
Yeah, you are a lawyer. I won't say learned, but you're certainly experienced. But you're experienced. And I respect that experience. In your experience, if a physician performed a procedure on a child without the consent of their parent, he or she would be breaking the law. Is that correct?
I would think so. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I'm looking at, I heard you talk about you've talked to a a psychiatrist or a psychologist that you know?
Yes.
Are these people who have treated people who are transgender? Have they actually treated people who are transgender?
To my knowledge, when I spoke to them, yes, they have treated people that are transgendered. They are psychiatrists. I don't know that they provided any type of hormones or anything like that, but they have provided the mental health part of it. Yes, sir.
And did they describe their treatment as something they do on a regular basis, or these were isolated incidents?
I didn't get that much in detail with it, so I can't answer that. If it's isolated or if it's in more, I can't answer that.
Was this inquiry made in response to your knowing about this legislation, or was it through some casual conversation you were having?
It was in response to me getting prepared for this bill.
Well, I've just read a study from a podunk university in Cambridge that somehow got listed as one of the top 5 research universities in the country. And the people who did that study, as opposed to a psychiatrist from Natchez or Corinth or wherever one of us may be from, they suggested that the majority of the people that they assessed in their study had a positive outcome from receiving this treatment, that it was good for children, that the long-term studies, it was good. The other thing they pointed out is that their study showed that 98% of the people who identified as trans when they were youth, no matter what happened, they continued to do that as adults. So there is this study by that, that place, Harvard, that's what they call it. That's the university called it. That study, those psychiatrists, those psychologists said that this is a positive result. And would you take into account any of those studies as you evaluate this legislation?
What my ears heard, and what piqued my interest about what you said, was the 95%.
Yeah.
There's that
98%.
98%. There's that 2% that are not happy.
Okay.
There's that 2% that are out there who may regret the situation when they were 11, when they were 12, and they had this surgery. If they're going through this, and if they're going through this and they regret it, that 2% needs to. They have rights too.
Yeah, they have a rights, and they have parents. And what I'm asking you is, those parents who have the best interest of their children at hand choose to find the best treatment for them, we're telling them we're not going to allow you to do that. That's what this bill does. Isn't that correct? I mean, not that you think is the best treatment, but if those parents think it's the best treatment, we're telling them you may think that's the best treatment, but we're going to tell you, no, you can't do that.
We're going to say that we want you to take a very conservative and apprehensive approach, meaning we want you to wait. I've also read studies, and one of them was from the National Health Service from the United Kingdom.
Oh.
And I understand, United Kingdom,
yeah,
they're our sister country. They went as far as you could go with this, and now they're starting to crawl that back because they've seen that a wait and see practice is good. Now, to your point about Harvard, I also told you that our Mississippi psychiatrists are probably a little bit more conservative than the ones up in New England. And that's what I was conveyed by the psychiatrists that I talked to, that they're a little bit more conservative.
I understand. This question was asked before. I'm going to make sure I understand it. State Medical Association has not issued a recommendation on this legislation.
I haven't seen one.
They have not requested that you pass this legislation.
Or they have not requested that we kill the legislation.
Well, yeah, but they have not asked you to pass. They're doctors, and they deal with patients all the time. And they have asked us to pass legislation, but they haven't asked you to pass this.
They haven't asked me, no, sir.
Okay. The other question I have, and this may be it. On the Arkansas ban, you said that it's on appeal, but the federal court that heard that case did rule it was unconstitutional.
I think that's right. I think that, and it may be further down the procedure posture of that case than I know, but I think that's right.
Are you aware that the chairman of public health, my good friend from both Southwest Mississippi, that as he said that it's going to take a whole session to deal with the hospital crisis, that I don't know if you know this, but he and I have this conversation all the time. For the last 4 years, he's been putting together a plan to deal with the hospital crisis.
I'm not privy to that, but if you, whatever you say.
I'll talk to him about it later, but that's sort of been what it. So we're going to take another whole session when we could have been doing it today, but we're going to work on that 2% problem. We got a 38 hospital crisis closing, no emergency room, can't find any way to get to the hospital to have a baby problem. We're not going to deal with that today.
I'm 100% behind you to help the rural hospitals.
Thank you.
A lady from Hines, Ms. Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have one last question. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
For those individuals that are going through hormone therapy right now, what would happen with them if this bill were to pass?
They would not be grandfathered in.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, all right, I don't see any further questions. Jim from Hines, you still have a question? You disappeared from the screen.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay,
Mr.
you're
Speaker.
recognized.
Thank you so much. Gentleman, yield, please. Gentlemen, I have a question, please. I hate to drag it on, but.
Come on, yeah, that's fine. I got another 4 hours after this.
Two questions. First of all, is traditional health insurance available for these people who choose to take this particular
They're not
surgery?
required to carry, the bill speaks to that, they're not required to carry it.
No, I'm saying, does insurance companies, health insurance companies, pay for this kind of a service?
I will tell you this, when I was preparing for this, I simply Googled paying for a reassignment surgery. And all of you can do that, and I will tell you that there were a number of finance companies that popped up willing to finance this type of surgery. So
Finance or health insurance coverage?
That's exactly right. There were type of companies that do that. They won't finance heart disease, but they would finance this.
Well, my other question is, don't you think that we're trying to govern morality in this particular bill? I mean, there's a separation of state and religion already.
We govern
morality. We are trying to govern morality, and I think that we need to get out of that business.
Well,
Don't you agree?
You would agree with me that it is immoral to murder. It is immoral to.
This is not murder and talking about.
It is immoral to steal. That is just the same. We govern that. That is part of what we do here. So you look all the way through our code. We govern morality and stuff such as that. Mr. Speaker, I'd move for final passage if nothing.
Let the master.
All right, a lady from Jones has an amendment.
Oh, no, baby, I'm sorry. Give me. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the House, if you will get your bill and go to lines 592, my amendment is going to address the 12% of poor white folks in this state, the 31% of blacks, 24% of Hispanics, 12% of Asians, the 14% of Mississippians in this state who are without health care, the 20% of Mississippians who live in poverty in this state. And what my amendment does, it says that notwithstanding any other provisions of section, and this is the Medicaid section, gentlemen from Madison, 4313-117, we found it. And it says to men on line 593, and then it says after 43-117, the division, which is the division of Medicaid, shall expand the state Medicaid program to provide coverage and reimburse for individuals who are under 65 years of age, are not pregnant, are not entitled to or enrolled for benefits under Part A or Part B of Medicare, are not eligible for Medicaid under any other paragraph of any other section in this bill, and whose income is not more than 133% of the federal poverty level applicable to a family of the size involved. Now, who does that help? We know that the majority of 77% of these individuals, these poor white folks, black folks, Hispanics, and Asians, are childless adults, 77% of them, that need this health care. We also know that 6 in 10 out of these families only have one person working. We also know that 4 in 10 of these people are middle-aged. We also know that there's a significant number of people, and they did a map, and y'all know I love to get you aboard, but I didn't get a chance to get the thing blown up. But you can see the Gulf Coast, you can see East Mississippi, you can see the Pine Belt on here, so people need help everywhere. Now that's for 10,000. Then when you look in Clark County, Newton County, going across your central Mississippi belt, they need Medicaid expansion as well. And so what this amendment does, it allows for the division to expand the program, and then the state of Mississippi can take advantage of that wonderful match of 90 to 10, where we put a dime, they give us 90 cents. The state of Mississippi can take advantage of that wonderful opt-in that gives us $300 million the first day. 300 million, first day. And then what we do, as opposed to dealing with 47 people out of 3 million, this amendment will do something for 166,600 people. Now, I heard some of y'all say, well, if we could get a chance to vote, we would vote to expand Medicaid. Now, when they move the table, you need to vote not to table. And then you'll get a chance to vote on this amendment. And then we'll know whether you want to deal with this health care problem that we're having in this state, with hospitals closing, neonatal units closing, people dying because they can't get health care. This is the fix. And you know, I would ask, since I see the chairman standing, of public health, to just let the House vote. Let's just see what the House thinks on this amendment. I would ask that you adopt it.
Jim from Choctaw, Mr. Hood,
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
state your point of order.
The latest amendment is amending Code Section 4313-115 by reference.
Okay. Set the amendment aside, and we will let the lawyers look at it. Yes, sir. Jim from Washington, do you have a question?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Is that point of order in writing like the rules say?
The rules don't say that.
Mr. Speaker, you've told us we had to have our point of orders in writing.
Sometimes
in the past, you told us that.
Okay. The rules do not say they have to be in writing. Rule says at the discretion of the speaker, they can be in writing.
Ooh-wee.
Read the rule.
Ooh-wee.
Read the rule.
Ooh-wee.
The man's got it in writing. There it is, right there. He's got it in writing. Raise your hand there, Mr. Choctaw. There it is. But the rules don't say that, gentlemen. Set the amendment aside. We'll let the lawyers look at it. We'll suspend business for a minute. Please let the House come back to order. The attorneys advised me that it does in fact amend by reference code section not in the bill. All right, anything further on the bill? I don't see any questions. Gentlemen, do you wish to close on the bill?
Yes. Move for final passage, Mr. Speaker.
Who's final passage? Open the machine, Madam Clerk. Question occurs on House Bill 1125. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 78 yeas and 28 nays, the bill passes. All right, anything further from public health today? Apparently not. Announcements, Mr. Clerk. Announcements, Madam Clerk.
County Affairs will meet after adjournment today in room 401A. Accountability will meet after adjournment in 103. Ways and Means will meet 10 minutes after adjournment in room 201.
Announcements by the members. Gentleman Jones, Mr. Scoggin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to announce that next Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, universities and colleges will have a joint session with the Senate Universities and Colleges for a meeting on some grants next Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock in room 204.
Jim from Rankin, Mr. Yancey.
Announcement. I'd like to remind all of you that this evening there is a patient access event sponsored by the Mississippi Medical Marijuana Association, sharing about the process of obtaining a medical marijuana card and about what it's like for patients to enter a dispensary and buy medical marijuana. I know all of you are going to be texting me if you don't go to this reception. It's at the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, and it starts at 5 o'clock and it's over at 6:30. So hope to see you there.
Any further announcements? I don't see any. Recognize the gentleman from Octavia. Excuse me. Gentleman from Prentice, you have something?
Adjourn member, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Ray Von Cannon. He taught at our community college Northeast for 25 years, automobile mechanic as well. And he's also one of our military veterans that received a Medal of Honor.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman from Octavia Hall for the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move this House stand adjourned until 9 a.m.
Motion is adjourned to 9 a.m. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. House adjourned to 9 a.m.